It's like I watched a few episodes of that TV show too. What was it called? Like
In the Dark.
In the Dark.
Yeah.
It wasn't for me. I'll just say that.
I wrote an article about that show. I don't know if you saw it.
No.
Yeah, I got to actually go on the set. The article was, the title of it was, "Is there a right way to act blind?" And because there was a big controversy around that show because they cast a sighted actress in the role of the blind main character, and the NFB boycotted it, and they like picketed in front of CBS, and they were like, nothing about us without us, like it's time to hire blind actors. And so I kind of wrote about that controversy, but then like went on set they had a blind writer on set. So I was like hanging out with Ryan Knighton, who was, if you should read his book if you haven't. Cockeyed is the name of it. Okay. And you should definitely talk to him for your podcast too. He's brilliant. He's got RP. It was a really wild experience to be on set with him, like just like experiencing a TV set as a blind person, but then also just thinking about like that question, like what does it actually mean to act blind? Like how is this performance authentic or inauthentic because it's a sighted actress playing the role? So I was not a super big fan of the show, but I definitely forced myself to watch every single episode in order to write that piece. Yeah,
no, that's a great question. And that you can create riots with however you answer that one, and it's a topic I've wanted to bring up on my podcast, but I've almost been kind of sitting on trying to figure out what exactly how I feel about it. Because, I went to film school and, I'm a video editor, and I made some short films in my life and things like that. So I don't know. It was a different time then. So it's like now it seems like Hollywood's like in a different era. Mm-hmm. But I kind of like what I've kind of come to think is like the C model. I think that's the name of that show.
Oh yeah. Is that the Apple TV one where like everybody in the world has gone blind?
With Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
And they hire a lot of actual blind actors. But obviously Jason Momoa isn't blind. But what they do is they have like someone on set, who's kind of like a coach. He is blind himself, and he kind of is able to kind of coach the actors and kind of train them in a way to kind of act like that. And I'm like, all right, well, you're hiring people from the community, and then you're also hiring a coach to ensure that there's authenticity there and it comes off as in a way that's respected by the blind community. And I kind of like that model where if you have to book a, non-disabled or, what depends on what the role is, that at the very least you could do is to make it realistic and not some like bullshit where it's like, it's like at least make it authentic.
Yeah.
That's like the least you could do. The most you could do, the best thing you could do is like, obvious, just hire someone who's actually disabled to play the role. Yeah, that was interesting. Like, but if you're gonna get Daniel Day-Lewis, like it's like that one movie he won the Academy Award for it. But it's like as a filmmaker, in my mind, I'm like, if I could get Daniel Day-Lewis in my film, am I gonna say no to that just because the role is disabled?
Right.
It's you see where I'm going with?
Yeah, I mean it's tricky.
Like I might hire him.
Like when that piece came out. In the New York Times Magazine, there's comments, they allowed for comments to be posted, and some people were like, excuse me, like, isn't that what actors do, right? Like actors, like if I'm having a movie about a bank robber who's missing his left pinky, like I don't have to find an actor who's a bank robber missing his left pinky, like we can just have an actor do that. Like that's the whole point of all acting. But on the other hand, it's like there is this history of marginalization in Hollywood and in society, and like blackface, for example, is like a really complicated and painful past. Like you would never dream of having a white actor play a black character, and there's like a whole spectrum of kind of considerations between them. Like I don't want to equate disability.
That's probably that's the worst. That's probably like the worst form of it that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and like some people do like have the word crip face, where they're like basically like this is a version of blackface but with disability. Like when I was writing that article, somebody warned me. They were like, don't talk about crip face because that's actually like aligning a much more painful history of like
I've never heard
minstrelsy and blackface. That like it's a different situation with disability. And I think that's true, but I also think it's not quite so simple as to say like that's what actors do.
Yeah, in that argument, I think, to my point, I think what makes everyone happy is if it's authentic and seems in line with reality. Mm-hmm. I think where everyone gets really mad is if you have someone playing a blind person and they're, wearing sunglasses and their head's just like tilted up to the sky, mm-hmm. and they're looking around aimlessly, mm-hmm. and, mm-hmm. That kind of tired, trope, it's just like it's very like lazy acting. And then two, it's just like, it's an insult to actual blind people. So it's like, and then it's like, I did a video, I had this little series I did, I haven't done one in a while, but it was called Ableist or Chill. And I kind of analyzed certain scenes from TV shows and movies. And I basically gave my verdict on it. Is something ableist or is it chill? Meaning it's just funny, and I did, Sheridan actually sent me it, but it was from the movie Dog with Channing Tatum. And there's a scene where he pretends to be blind so he can get a discount in a hotel. Uh-huh. And he's wearing like the sunglasses, the wraparound sunglasses that, kind of cover your eyes. Yeah. He has a cane. When he's talking to the front desk receptionist, he's kind of looking up, uh-huh. not even in her direction. Uh-huh. And he's kind of giving like a sob story about blindness. Uh-huh. And it's like, that was not that long ago. And like, that stuff is still getting done.
So was that ableist or was that chill?
Oh yeah, it was definitely ableist. And but what blows my mind is like in this day and age is like everything is so like everyone's so gung ho and about like diversity, equity, and inclusion, mm-hmm. but it's like that made it through the cracks, like that made it through, and no one even thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a point people make a lot. Like I've heard Sheridan make it too. I think where diversity, equity, inclusion means, racial inclusion. It means gender diversity. It means sexual orientation. It increasingly means disability, but traditionally, like, no, like that's not really been part of the conversation.
Obviously not. Yeah.
And I think Hollywood is a really good example of that. Like you're pointing out, like people have been much more attuned to racial diversity and gender diversity in film than they have in terms of disabled actors. And so I do think that like, while the number of disabled roles compared to the number of disabled actors that are cast is so bad, like I do think that there is some kind of like affirmative action that needs to happen where people should feel embarrassed about casting non-disabled actors, even if that doesn't mean that like philosophically, like the point of like, I don't want to make the argument that like no actor shall ever play an identity that they don't share. But I think like while there are these huge imbalances, like it is worth pushing back.
Oh, 1,000%. And one thing, it would encourage more people to go into that line of work.
Yeah.
If you really did feel like a sense of, oh, I can do that, Mm-hmm. And I've always thought like, I think what like needs to happen is we need like, obviously it goes, everyone knows this, but I don't know if people actually think about it, but it's like, if we had, imagine if like a Harry Styles level celebrity was blind, mm-hmm. how much the perspective of blindness would change, just because so many people are going to be thinking about it in a different way.
I mean, Stevie Wonder is Harry Styles. Stevie Wonder crushes Harry Styles with his celebrity. I mean, I'm old, but
that's true. Or
Ray Charles.
But I'm talking about, I'm not talking musically.
Oh, but I just, in terms of like their place in like the American consciousness, like everybody knows those two names, even little kids, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more of like a, and unfortunately I'm speaking in the sense of like a sex symbol kind of thing, where mm-hmm. like teenage girls or like preteens are like learning about blindness and then, because I feel like what happens is men kind of emulate what women want. Mm-hmm. So it's like, even then they're going to be more open to learning about it. It may be a bad take. I don't know. It's just something I thought of. Like if you had like basically, long story short, my point is A-list, we need more A-list people with disabilities, because it's going to make people, it's just going to put it on more people's radars is all.
Definitely.
Is basically my point.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think back to like the Village model, right? Like we need A-list celebrities with disabilities. We also need like your boss at like Kinko's to be disabled, you know, and like your coworker and like your teacher and like multiple kids in your class. And, you know, I think when it feels, you know, it's about integration. You know, I think blind people in particular are just like are hidden from the rest of the world a lot. And so when you do see somebody, you're just like, oh my God, how is he even going to cross the street? You know, whereas if like there's enough critical mass out in the world, like on TV, in your workplace, in your school, then you're like, I'm not going to even question how that guy's going to cross the street. Cause like, I just saw him like prepare a chicken cordon bleu for my sister-in-law, you know, whatever, you know, it's like,
exactly.
You gotta, it's about integration.
Yeah. And I guess I agree completely, more people all across the board, but I guess my point was specifically about just what's like a slick way to reach mass audiences. And, you know, it's the classic, like teen pop star.
Yeah, totally.